parent meeting. Took a little while to record. All right, welcome parents. I'm gonna repeat that. Whittier Warriors Youth Running Parent Meeting for the cross-country season in 2021. We're gonna go over a number of topics. Before we do that, just so you know, there absolutely will be time for questions. You have two options for that. You can put them in the chat as we go, or you can feel free to just jump in and ask the questions. At the end, we'll absolutely open it for questions. Keep in mind, questions should be general. If they're very, very specific to your case or your children's case, those are better left off to the end if we can stay on a little later, or better yet in person, right? And we can set up some time for that if we need to. Outside of that, make sure you stay on mute while you're not talking, and then of course come off mute if you need to say something or ask a question. With that, let's get going. We are going to take pretty much the full hour. I won't lie, there's a lot of information. I will try to go through it quickly, but for those of you that don't know me, I'm not known for short conversations. So, all right, this is our agenda. As you can see, it barely fits on the screen. Coaches and staff will go over that. Track versus cross country. There's always a question that comes up if you're not familiar with the sports and what's the differences. USATF membership. I'm not going to read all of these, but you can see on the screen their shoes and gear, practices in our groups, and so on down. We will talk specifically about this season and what it's looking like so far. And we'll get more into that. We'll talk a little bit about where we stand in terms of COVID. There's been a lot of changes over the last few seasons. We'll talk very importantly about what you can do as a parent, right? What your role is on this team. And we'll go over a few things. And at the very end, we'll talk a little bit about training. I won't get into specifics of training. There's a whole other video that we made for that. I will point to you on the website if you want to see that. That's a whole hour and 15 minutes. So I'm not going to get into training, but I will go over some things that we can do wrong when it comes to training youth. But we'll get there when we get there. All right. With that, let's get started. Coaches and staff, I'm the head coach. My name is David Rojas. I have about, I've probably lost track at this point, 12 or 13 years coaching experience, all in distance running. I do not coach sprints, jumps, or field events of any type. Our focus has always been on distance, whether it be at the high school level or now with youth. Outside of that, I work in the field of technology for a company called Red Hat. And then we have a ton of extremely valuable coaches on our squad here. So starting with group coaches, we call them group coaches because they are responsible for the 5 groups that we have, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But for now, just know that these are responsible for the groups. Coach Aguilera, Coach Lily, Coach Dominguez, Coach Perez, and we actually have an opening right now that we're trying to fill. So I'm currently filling one of those gaps, but we will figure that out very soon. In addition to that, we have volunteer coaches who are a huge help. Coach Lila, that used to be one of our group coaches, and is now swapping out with her sister as she goes off to college, so we will miss her dearly. Coach Isabella was also one of our group coaches, but she's in college and trying to balance the two, so she's kind of worked her way into a volunteer position. Coach Martin, which is also one of our parents, and Coach Perdomo, who's helping me with this call. Also technically former parent, but always a big helper and was an assistant with me over at the high school as well a while back. And we're looking for more volunteer coaches, and I'll get to that a little bit later. So with that, let's move on. I want to kind of keep this at a fast pace, but again, stop me if there's confusion, things that you think I'm missing that you need to know. Track versus cross country. So track is the ones that people mostly know, right? And that is our spring season. We do participate in track. We run things like the 1,500 meters, 3,000 meters, sometimes the 800. Sometimes even we're thinking in the future, looking at some distance relays. But that is on an oval track, right? The one that you're familiar with seeing in stadiums, the ones you see in the Olympics and so on. Right now, we're going into our cross-country season in the fall. So it's always cross-country in the fall, track in the spring. So we do not run on a track, even though we may train on a track at some point if we get back into a school post-COVID here. But the races themselves are run on dirt, grass, concrete, different surfaces, different parks, different areas. It's not always, definitely not in a circle, and not always flat, sometimes hilly, sometimes not. Sometimes it's, soft terrain like grass that'll slow down a runner. Sometimes it's on cement or concrete that makes people run faster. But the idea is that a runner has to, be versatile and adjust. It's a little different. Scoring is different as well. In track, we're really looking for times, and yes, placement, of course, for medals and so on. But in cross country, the real target for our runners are their placement more than the time, because the courses vary, right? And the times are going to vary because of those courses. but if they can place well, they're going to score well for their team, and we can actually score as a team now. I won't get into all the details, but that's something we can go into a little bit later. But just know that placement is more important than time. So don't always look at your kid's time and say, oh, he ran slower than he did last week. Well, last week was on a flat course. This week is on a very, very hilly course. So that may make the difference. Training, different or not, I will tell you some programs do make significant changes in training between track and cross country. We do not. Our training is very similar across the year. We run a year-round program. That's the same thing I did when we were at the high school level. Our goal is to have kids run very well in the longer distance races, and they're very similar, especially in the youth categories. A 3,000 race is by far the most common race, and we will train kids to run well in that. Doesn't mean they won't run well in the 15 or 8 or in the 4K or even 5Ks. We will do some 5Ks, but it's all geared towards the same direction year round. All right, USATF membership. Get into some of the logistical things, but this is one that's super important, so I put it right up front. If you have not seen it in the weekly newsletter or email that we send out, we need to make sure that all your kids are not just members of this team. So registering for the team is one part of it. They also need to register with the USATF for 2 reasons. We are a USATF team, meaning we're under that large organization umbrella, which is the USATF. And if you're not aware of this, it's the same organization that sends Olympians that today are competing out in Tokyo. It's no different. We're just part of the youth portion of USATF. They need to be a member of that so they can one of two things, right? One, participate in those events once those events start happening more frequently as we kind of go out of COVID here. Two, it's what covers our liability insurance, right? So we have a deadline coming up. If kids are not registered with the USATF and assigned to our team, they will not be allowed at any team function. Okay, someone has their phone not on mute. Please go on mute because we can hear you talking in the background.
Coach, I can go ahead and mute them. So.
Okay, thank you. So that's the 2 important reasons why we need to have that membership. That money does not go to us, that goes to the USATF overall organization. And they do provide us, I guess you could say it directly, right? Discounted insurance policies that we pay for as a team. And that's what allows us to participate, or not participate, but to be able to use school facilities, for example, or city facilities. We have to show proof of insurance. And so if we are not able to show that, or if we bring kids that are not covered, that becomes a liability insurance for the school or the city, or issues like that. So we have to make sure and do that. So that's why we have to be very strict with that. Please make sure and take care of that if you haven't, or ask questions if you have concerns about that. All right. The other portion that goes with it is age verification. If your kids are returners and already have a USATF membership and you already did age verification, you're done. Don't ever have to worry about it ever, ever, ever again. Like every year the membership renews, but you have done your age verification, you're done. If you have not done it, if you're new to the team and new to USATF, you must do age verification as well. That could be secondary. In other words, you could do it the week after or so on, but please do it before we start racing USATF meets, because in many cases, even in some of the earlier meets, they will not let you sign up unless your kid has been age verified. And that's just an issue of fairness, right? You can't have an 11-year-old pretending to be 7-year-olds and winning it with the younger kids. When it comes to postseason, they absolutely will not be allowed to race unless they are fully age verified. It's not something that takes a day or an hour. Sometimes it takes a week or 2. So if you wait to the last minute, your child may not be cleared in time to participate in those postseason races or some of the regular season meets as well. All right, commercial break. And I put this in here only because I was hoping this is when everyone that's going to be on this call is here. Super important. Registration for everyone, returners, new runners, people that we love, people that we don't know. It doesn't matter. It closes midnight Wednesday, tomorrow, basically Wednesday at midnight. So if you're a returner that for some reason has not signed up, you need to sign up by then. If you have friends that want to sign up, they need to sign up by then. We are being much less flexible in terms of our closing date. And to be honest with you, there's a very clear reason why. We have 147, I think, runners right now. We are well beyond capacity. We're short on coaches. We're 2 coaches short right now that we're hoping to fix in the next week or 2. We can't take any more kids. So we are closing registration and that is it, no exceptions. So please make sure that you take care of that if you haven't yet. Uniform orders, same thing, due tomorrow at midnight, Wednesday the 4th. And that includes the gear orders as well. But uniforms is the thing we really want to focus on. If you're new to the team, your child is new to the team, they need to have a uniform. It's already paid for. You paid for it already as part of your registration. There's no additional cost. but we need to know what size. We cannot order for your child. So please make sure you place that order. It's the same order where you order the gear. We won't charge you for that. If we do, please reply back and say, hey, I'm new, I shouldn't be being charged for this, and we'll double check that. But make sure you order on that same Google form that, again, also on the weekly newsletter that you should be receiving. So make sure, again, that's done by tomorrow. If not, the order will go out. We can't keep, other years we've waited and waited and waited, and in doing so, we're penalizing everyone else that did it on time, and then their kids don't have a uniform in time for the next race. So we're going to send out the order on Thursday, and if you haven't placed it, your kids will not get a uniform, and there will be a $5 extra charge after that. And quite honestly, it's simply to make sure people do it on time. It's the only reason we're doing that, because if not, we get into October still trying to figure out uniforms and trying to place additional orders, and we need to focus on coaching the kids and doing activities with the kids, not on trying to chase people down. So make sure you get that in as well. And I hope that doesn't sound harsh. It's just with 147 kids, we have to make sure that this is all in order so we can take care of the stuff that really matters to your kids, right? Not figuring out uniforms. All right, back to the agenda, shoes, uniforms, and so on. Running shoes. So first of all, there is different types of running shoes, anywhere from spikes that actually have metal spikes underneath. There's flats that are used for racing, like in cross-country races. There is training shoes and different types of training shoes. For now, especially if your kids are new, they only need the trainer or the training shoe. Make sure it is a running shoe. This is very important. There is all kinds of Nike shoes, for as an example, that look like running shoes. They're not. They're just fashionable shoes that have a Nike logo on there, that they're not meant to be running. Make sure that you go to a running shoe store, or at the very least, Big Five, when you can find cheaper ones, but make sure you ask for a running shoe, because there's a ton of stuff out there. There's sneakers, there's cross trainers, there's shoes to walk in. Can they run in that? Sure. Is there a chance they'll get injured with those? Yes, as well. Or at the very least, not feel as comfortable. So not saying to go out there and spend $200 on the latest fad of running shoes, but at least go to Big Five, get something that's going to be stable for them and provide them some protection so they don't get injured. And if you have questions about that, again, we can talk more about that. We do have a discount. It's on the weekly newsletter as well in terms of the Running Warehouse, which is an online shop. But I would recommend, if you can, go to a running shoe store like Snail Space the first time at least. Get your kids fitted. They'll watch them run. They'll see how they pronate, which means how the foot lands and rolls, and they'll put them into the right shoe that feels comfortable to them. I'm always asked the question, what's the best shoe out there? There's no such thing. It's the best shoe for the individual runner, right? So the best thing is to try different ones and figure out what's best for them. But just, again, make sure it's a running shoe. Racing flats and spikes for returners. A lot of parents, you already know about these, but just as a reminder, in California, we are not allowed to wear spikes in any cross-country meet, high school, youth, or otherwise. They can use racing flats, which is basically a lightweight shoe, not a trainer. They shouldn't practice in them, but they're used for racing. You can get those. We recommend those as your kid progresses, both in time on the team and time running, as well in their ability to race, that you do invest in a racing flat and then spikes during the track season. But if they're brand new to running and they're in our dog group, don't spend the money yet. Let them feel comfortable just enjoying the sport, not putting all that pressure of like, okay, you got to put on your racing flat now. That comes later in time. There's no rush. And then if you have questions about that, you can ask me one-on-one as well. All right, spirit gear, a lot of our warrior stuff just to show support. That could be for the kids or for parents, t-shirts, hoodies, magnets. I don't know what else we have. We have all kinds of stuff. Again, same Google form. Make sure you turn that in and get that for you. And I'm already losing my voice, but we'll get through this. So again, that is due tomorrow at midnight as well. Right, rollers, golf balls, the stick, and more. There, for those of you that are runners, you may know this already, but there is a ton of information of different devices or things you can buy at a sporting goods store to kind of roll out or help fix some of the issues you may have in terms of tight muscles and so on. There's a ton of those, and we do recommend some of these. Foam rollers are probably the best thing for anyone to have. We'll spend a little more time with the kids this season kind of going over how to use those. So if you either have one or can get one, they're cheap. Anywhere from probably 18 to 30, 35 bucks, you can get one. And we'll spend some time showing the kids how to use one. It does help in terms of kind of recovering from just basic things like soreness, stretching out the muscles and things like that. There's other more specific things like golf balls or even softballs and things like that that they can use on their feet. Those are more specific to specific aches and pains, and hopefully they don't deal with those at all. But if they do, we'll go over with that. The stick is kind of a portable way of rolling. I personally am not a huge fan of the stick, but a lot of people love them and swear by them. So it's another option as well. It's a nice thing you can carry those really easily anywhere you go, throw them in a backpack and you're off and running. What else? Lights. As the hour changes right around that time, we're going to be more likely in a situation where it's dark, right? And especially if we don't get back into a school with lights. So every year we have kids running with headlights on. We do provide some lights as well in terms of identification for teams, different colors. But yeah, headlights are really good, or some of those body lights that you can buy. For those of you that are runners, you know what I'm talking about. That's a good idea as well. As we get closer to that, we'll post some things on Facebook, send it out in the newsletter. But just something to keep in mind when the hour does change. Again, right now, beanies would be crazy to wear, or gloves, but any of that stuff in terms of keeping the kids warm when it does get cooler, end of November, near the end of the season, it may be something that we want to wear, especially the kids that hang out for the postseason as well. All right. I'll pause here. Is there any questions at this point, or anything in chat that we should be?
There has been questions in the chat, but everyone has been so helpful in helping to answer some of those questions. So, and just kind of reiterating what you said, that, when it comes to shoes, right, it's very individualized to comfort and size and all of those things. So as you mentioned, there's not just one particular shoe that's the best running shoe out there. So we had a question about age verification on USTF.
Okay.
But Melissa, thank you so much for helping out with that. We were able to add the link in the chat for that. So thank you, current parents, returning parents, for helping me out with that.
Very much. Yeah. Thank you, parents, for all the help with that. Yeah, and we'll talk more about that. But this team exists today and succeeds as much as it does because of the parents that we have. I can't iterate that enough. And so we're very lucky to have the parents that we have, and we're very fortunate to have all the new parents joining us as well. But yeah, okay, great. So I'm glad those things have been answered. And yeah, I can't emphasize enough, there is no great shoe. People will tell you that, but they really are what adjusts to you. Everybody's feet, legs, and etc. are different, and they'll adjust to different shoes. All right, practices and groups. This is an important one here, and we'll go over a few things here. So, and honestly, we developed this over the years. When we started, we didn't have multiple groups. We only had 11 kids, right? We had one group of kids, all different ages, all different abilities. And we just kind of started working on it. And as we evolved and grew in both numbers and ranges of ages, we knew we had to make some changes. And so over the years, we continued to make changes. We went from one group to two to three, three to four, and now to 5 groups. We call them these animal names, and the original 4 came from, if any of you know a little bit about Mexican history or the Aztec calendar, these are the 4 original warrior groups that it was the dog, the monkey, jaguar, and eagle warriors, and so they came from that. Rabbit was the recent addition, as we had to go to 5 groups. But more importantly, what do these groups mean, and why do they exist? So they exist because there's a very different in terms of how we should coach kids, and really in any sport, right? But specifically right now to running, when there's a 6-year-old that's never run before, or a 14-year-old that's been running for 6 years, right? Drastic differences in terms of how we coach, how we approach, what we focus on. There's a long list of things that we have to make sure and adjust. And so if we try to coach everybody together, we really can't do that. It's impossible. Even personalities of coaches and personalities of kids have to match up. So our dog group, and we'll go through all of these, right? Our dog group is typically newer kids, and usually the younger, newer kids that we keep in there. So the brand new to running, brand new, in some cases even brand new possibly to sports. We focus entirely on making running fun. That's really the only goal. And teaching them to run. I know it sounds a little silly because it feels like, well, everybody knows how to run, coach. Well, yeah, but it's really getting to the basics and repeating those over and over and over again. and making sure that they enjoy it, right? If they come back at the next practice, we've succeeded with our first goal. And if they come back to the next one, we've succeeded in our next goal. That is the goal. And parents, I know there's a ton of different type of parents out there, right, on this call right now. Some of you want your kid to be the next Olympic champion and attend the next Olympics, whether it be in Tokyo or somewhere else. Others of you are just happy that they're not playing video games and they're out there doing something active, right? And there is absolutely no wrong or right way of approaching this, but we're going to ask for your patience. For those of you that do want to have your kids make the Olympics, they're not going to do it out of the dog group, right? We're going to focus on making it fun, making sure they continue to run, because they can't make the Olympics if they hate running and quit. So that is what we focus on the dog group. Mileage is low. There's a lot of explanation, a lot of joking around, even to some degree. You know, again, it's making it fun. Practices last between 50 minutes to 60 minutes and the full hour, so from 5:30 to 6:30. And most part we'll do that. Once in a while we'll go a little over. Sometimes we'll play games with them even after practice. They tend to be games in which they're running, so they're getting more physical activity, but it is all about that. Then they progress to monkey. So monkey now, we don't compete necessarily now against other people, even though they will run races, right, with others, but the focus is really competing against themselves. So can I beat what I did last time? Can I improve on my time? Can I get a PR, as we call it, personal record? And that's what we do. We don't really focus on, oh, are you going to beat your teammate? Are you going to beat that other team or things like that? And we don't put that type of pressure on them, but we do start saying like, hey, you got this time last time. Can you improve on that? And so we will start looking a little bit more at how to do that. Start emphasizing like, hey, if you're consistent about coming to practice, you're going to improve. If you don't come, then you're probably not going to improve. If you do this and that, you know, the drills, the warm-ups, the cool downs, etc., all that's going to help you. But it's all about beating their former self, right? Being a better version of themselves, at least specifically to running. And that's the focus in the monkey group. And again, the coaching changes a little bit too, right? In dog, we want our coaches to be funny and friendly and so on. And monkey, still there's a lot of that, right? But we begin to be a little bit like, hey, you want to improve, then you need to do this, right? That type of stuff. It's reminders more than anything. Practices will go the full hour, sometimes a little bit over to the 70-minute mark, more or less. And then rabbit, we added that group in because we noticed that we had between monkey and rabbit, so everyone knows, mileage is about the same. There's not any difference at all in some cases. So they run the same amount. Difference being is rabbit tends to be a little bit higher performers. And so for safety reasons, we want to group those kids together so they're running together and not spread apart, so far apart that the coaches can't track them. So that's the reason why rabbit came to be. And there is a little bit more of preparing them to train, meaning there's a difference between coming to practice and actually training for something, right? So we now start talking about training to perform. We're not yet putting that pressure for them to go out there and perform at a super high level, but we start introducing them to that concept and kind of putting in that little bit more discipline, a little bit more of like, you missed practice. Hey, we missed you. Not necessarily saying, hey, you're in trouble, you missed. No, but hey, we missed you. Why did you miss practice? Things like that, making sure they're clear that they have a correlation between performing well if they do what they need to do. All right. And of course, promoting the sport now. We'll talk a lot more about this runners and those runners and getting them to learn some, professional names and know that the Olympics are going on and things like that. Then we progress to Jaguar and Eagle. Jaguar now, and I changed the color here now because really we start getting into what we consider our racing team and our postseason team. Now, let me be super clear. There's a ton of kids that are not in these two groups that make it into the postseason. In fact, all the way to nationals because they're younger. But these teams are the kids that are older, have been running for a longer time, and now we can really start training, right? So Jaguar and Eagle are definitely the expectations. We're now training to compete against other teams, against other runners. We're trying to not only get PRs, but hopefully go after some records, go after the postseason, making regionals, making championship meets, making it all the way to nationals. Jaguar is kind of the first step in that. We talk a lot more about strategy, a competitive mindset, things like that. Practices start to go a little longer, right? They can go an hour and 15 minutes for those practices. The conversations become a little bit more in tune in terms of how can you perform. What do you need to do, not just at practice, but at home, right? In terms of getting enough sleep and things that we'll cover in a little bit. Eagle is the evolution of that, right? And it's our final group. These are the kids that are vying to at least make regionals and hopefully go all the way to nationals. These kids have now been with us for a number of years, and we really are looking to see to get them to perform, right? And we hope at that point they've got that mindset, right? that they're ready and old enough to understand that, hey, I want to perform, and they want to go after that in that kind of way. And of course, the performance expectations are a little higher. These are kids that can run, 6:30, 6:15 or better in a mile, and so on. And again, just like in the other groups, in these groups, we are going to get more strict, right? We are going to question runners that are missing a lot of practice. There is higher expectations on the team. If kids are messing around, not doing what they're supposed to, we are going to get a little upset. There's going to be a little more discipline in that sense. And a lot of it, parents, is to get them ready for high school. If they're going to run in high school or participate in any sport, they need to kind of be ready for that mindset. Right, I'll pause there. Any questions on that, either in the chat or questions parents have?
The only question we had, and I put the link to how to contact the USATF, is just that if they're needing to change the name, because if their name was inputted incorrectly, how to go about changing it. So I went ahead and put the link for that.
Okay. That's super important, because whatever name comes out there will end up on our roster on athletic.net, which I'll show you later as well. And then, it's basically their biography of their entire running career, and everything goes in there. So we want to make sure we get that correct.
The other thing, Coach, will you be posting or being able to send out in an email to parents this PowerPoint so that they can go back and kind of process all the information and review?
Yeah, I could do that. I could post it on the website, and I'll show everyone where it's going to end up. See, I think we've done that in the past. Yeah, good point. All right, let's keep going. This we kind of covered already, but that racing team, the last two groups, Jaguar and Eagle, we may have in about a month another meeting like this, shorter, specifically for parents of Jaguar and Eagle. We do have stricter requirements for those kids. Attended, for example, we have a Saturday practice that the kids, it's mandatory. It's not an optional practice for those groups, so they practice 4, not 3 times a week. Attendance for practice and races is really, that's, and parents, keep in mind, right? We know that at the end of the day, can we really enforce mandatory anything, right? We can't, right? We're not going to sit there and call you guys and say, hey, your kid missed practice. No, but just know that's the expectation that we have. And we will question your child if they're missing a lot of things, because it does impact the team. Believe it or not, running is a team sport. People think that it's not. It is absolutely a team sport. And we do want to kind of get them into that mindset. But again, that's only in the upper two groups. Once they get older, once they get more experience. So if you're new, that's not a concern right now, but just something that that we want to get them there. So when they get to high school again, it's not a big shock when things change when they get there. We really want those groups to be leaders by example, right? And we have some kids that are the epitome of that. They're just great at that. Some came to us that way already. Parents, thank you very much. Others have developed over the years. And they're leaders in different ways. Some are very vocal leaders, others are very quiet leaders, but they're still leaders, by example and by other means. And the other part of it too is if your child is Jaguar and Eagle, there is a higher expectation than when we do travel, when we go to regionals and nationals, that they can attend that and make the time to participate in that and kind of represent their team in that way. All right, races and schedules. This is a huge one because for the last, year and a half, we have not been able. So and the reason I have still the same slide that I haven't changed for that long is that this is the last season that we had where we actually can give you a schedule ahead of time. Normally, this is what we do. We give you the whole season and we're able to, you're able to kind of plan out your weeks. Right now, once again, we cannot do that like we couldn't last season, the season before that, and so on. Because of COVID, we don't have any guarantees of what meets will occur, what they won't. We're keeping close contact with the USATF as they kind of release their guidelines. So we'll see, right, what comes of that. And as it happens, we will continue to add them. Once they are released the calendar, we'll fill it up completely, make sure you have, the updated version of it. Other things like fundraisers, picture day, things like that, all will end up on this calendar. And I'll show you in a little bit later where we are in terms of the website and where this calendar is located. But just know the calendar is super important. Make sure you check that all the time. We also will include things in the weekly newsletter to remind you, things that are happening that week or in a couple of weeks. We'll start putting reminders in there, but you can plan ahead through this. But again, we're hoping in the next couple of weeks to have more information, and we'll, get the calendar updated. Yeah.
Coach, what about social media in terms of the schedule and announcements as well?
So on certain things we do put in there, but I wouldn't use that as your source of truth, right? The weekly newsletter is your source of truth. What is there is what's happening. We will put reminders, but keep in mind social media in terms of the Facebook group page internally. Yes, we'll put a lot of reminders in there. So make sure you're a member of that, not the external page. You have to request membership and get added into our internal Facebook page. That one will have a lot of reminders. All the other social media is publicly facing. So we're not going to put things like, hey, don't forget to turn in your money for whatever, that's not something we put on there. There we'll put things like the results of the races were this, and the kids did great, and here's some pictures. But it's not going to have all of the stuff that's on the calendar or on the newsletter. That's meant for the general public, not just for team members. What else on the calendar as well? This one in the column in the center, all runners. This will give you an idea for some of these races or some of the events. It's for everybody, right? Every single runner, whether they're brand new, 6 years old, or been running 6 years or 4 years with us, and they're 14 years old, they should attend or can attend. These other ones that say selected, that means that, and we'll get into those more once we see the races that are released. And this is more true in track than it is for cross country. But there'll be cases where we're going to make selections of who attends certain meets or not. And I'll be honest with you, parents, it's not that we're trying to hold your kid back or anything like that, but a brand new runner that's never competed in a cross country meet, to throw them into a meet of 300 runners that have been running for many years. I won't lie to you, some of the kids will come in dead last all by themselves, and they will be crying. They will have a miserable experience and never want to come back to practice again. And we're not going to put kids through that. So we're going to make sure kids can at least run with the group, run with the crowd, right? And feel good about their performance and their improvement. If they're not quite there, if, for example, if they're still walking and struggling with that part, then we're going to make sure they get to a certain point before we can do that. But there'll be plenty of events and activities in which they can participate, but I just know that some of them they will not be. The other one is qualified. You'll see them here. It's not our selection. This is they have to qualify either by time or by placement in a previous meet. And again, when those come up near the end of the season, usually those are postseason and cross country. We'll let you know all the details of what it takes to qualify. We'll make sure the kids are aware of that, so it's very clear and what they have to do to qualify for those postseason meets. All right, any questions on that?
Coach, in terms of this race and schedule, this particular slide, you're using it more as a visual.
Correct. Yeah. Like I said, this is from like a year and a half ago, because it's the last time I was able to populate one preseason.
Right. I just wanted to clarify. This is not
for
this
you.
Season.
In fact, here, let's do this. I'm going to move this out of the way. Just do that real quick since we're talking about that. So on our page, worldeliteracing.com, we have a bunch of stuff in here if you haven't looked at it yet, but most of you have. This is how you signed up. Under Warriors Youth Cross Country and Track, if you go here, you go to the schedule itself. This is where you'll find our calendar, and this is the actual calendar, right, that we're working off of. As you can see, this only goes through part of August. And it's because a lot of question marks are occurring here, but we're hoping to get answers soon on that. But the same format applies, right? The type of runners, the dates, the times, the events, locations, all that good stuff. While we're here, so we don't double back on this, it still has the age groups, the time the practices are, all that good stuff, in case anybody's interested. We also have under training, there's Warrior Youth Training Series. This has some of the stuff, and I think we've told some of the new kids and the parents, if they want to look at the lunch matrix, they can watch the video here. If they want to do Myrtles, they can watch it here and practice at home. And then here's what I was mentioning about the introduction to coaching youth distance runners. It's about an hour and 15 minutes. If you're interested in the training portion of how we approach it, it's all here. Originally, we used this as a way of trying to train our own coaches, but it's, we're going to be very transparent and open in that sense. If you want to take a look at it, feel free to, take a look and see how we approach training or coaching kids. That's on there as well. And I think that's it. I mean, there's other stuff you may want to look at, like some success stories, and I need to add some of the national stuff in here. But we've had kids that have gone from our program on to high school and done very, very well there, and so we call out those names as well. And then I think there's other stuff here, routines and stuff that you may want to look at yourself if you're a runner, or you may want to have the kids look at as well. All right. Let's get back to the presentation. All right, this season, and there's not a lot here because there's not a lot that we have yet, but like I mentioned already, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. We're trying to work out the schedule. As soon as the USATF releases that and lets us know what's going on, we will start posting the meets that we're going to. In addition to, or in lieu of, depending on the situation, we will be doing team time trials. Those are super important because we want to make sure the kids see the progression from not just from year to year, but from like week to week and month to month. So you'll see us throw together time trials where it's just our team or other opportunities so they can see their improvement, regardless of what's happening in other races. And also open to every single kid on the team, right? So those are important that we have those. Also, I'm hoping, right, and we usually do, and we did before COVID, is we'll do at least one 5K, maybe two, throughout the season. Those are fun. And that honestly, it's not super important how well the kids do in the race, even though some kids do very well and come home with their glasses or trophies or medals or whatever it may be. But it's really for the idea to introduce them into the rest of the running community, right? So it's really, think of it as a field trip. We go out there, we take the kids, they get a feel for the reality that it's not just them alone with their team running with their friends, that there's this whole other community of runners. And they get to see that firsthand, seeing all people of all ages, people that are their age, adults, people that are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s out there running. So we just have fun with those activities as well.
I think, Coach, as well, you were mentioning before, just the idea that they get a positive experience for the running community and how supportive the community is of each other.
Right.
And so that's important for our kids to have that kind of experience, that positive support environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those of you that are runners and for all of us that are adults and have been out there in the running world for a long time, running's a hard sport, but the reason why we all do it, beyond the medals and all that, because that fades. Believe me, I don't get medals anymore. But you go out there and you participate in that community. You run with other folks. You make great friendships. I always tell people that, of course I'm biased, but runners make the best friends. Oh, and the other thing that I just mentioned to some parents earlier, when we were at nationals, runners never steal from each other. And that's just the theory I have. At any meets, at any activity we've ever been in, nothing ever gets stolen. You hear this from other teams where equipment gets stolen. Runners just never do that. But anyway, that's a completely biased answer. All right, safety. This is super important. That's why it has its own slide. Practice runs. Parents, a ton of you, we've seen, and a ton of new parents especially, we've seen a ton of you out there running with the kids. We love it. We encourage it. This is not a team or a sport in which we're like, hey, parents, go sit over there. We're going to handle your kids. No, we want you around the kids. We want you around the team. We want you participating. And really, the main reason, honestly, is to help us supervise, right? We're in a public park. We're in a big park. We cannot control who is at the park or who's not at the park, right? And we have a ton of kids. And so absolutely run with your kids, run close to your kids, and run in the vicinity of your kids. For the sake of supervision, it's very important. We're very happy to have that. So I know some of you have asked me, like, Coach, is it okay? We don't want to interfere. No, come on, come and join us. Come run with us. We love it. And the kids appreciate it as well. So it's a good thing. We're all part of a larger community. Now, that being said, right, we need you to supervising, not coaching, right? And there's sometimes a fine line. So definitely, if we can ask you to help us with supervising, running with the kids, encouraging them even, but not coaching the kids. Leave that to the coaches so there's no confusion. The kids can easily get confused in terms of who they listen to. What else? The other part of safety is keeping up in group assignments. So we talked about the group assignments. We put it out in the newsletter after our first time trial and how we sorted the kids. And like I mentioned back then, it is not a perfect science by any means. It is sometimes very difficult to figure that out. There's so many factors. Factors include the age of the child, the running age, meaning how long have they been running? Beginners versus kids that have been running 3 or 4 years. The maturity level of the child matters a lot. And at that age, it drastically, there could be 8-year-olds and they act very differently in terms of that. There's a lot of factors, of course, their performance, their ability to run, prior sport experience, things like that. So with that said, we've grouped them into groups now, right? And just know, parents, that we will never do anything just to like make a child feel bad or anything like that, but we have to do it for safety reasons. So know that we may move kids up because they're running way ahead and getting ahead of coaches and everyone else, and it's not safe for them running by themselves, or we may ask them to back off a little bit and run with the group. Or the reverse, if your child is running in the back of a group and starting to fall off pace, And it's getting very difficult for coaches to, because we can't have just know this, that it's not that we want to leave your child behind or make them feel by putting them into another group, but we can't have one coach double back on one runner and leave 29 other runners by themselves, right? So the coaches are going to stay happy medium, somewhere in the middle range of the kids. But if we have kids falling back, for safety reasons, we're going to have to move them into another group. So there's two options, right? One is to talk to your child, make sure that if it's an issue of them not trying hard enough, that gets corrected, right? It could be that they're like, I don't want to, I don't care, or okay, let's get that corrected. If it's not, and it's a matter of they're currently today, they're not at that ability, that's perfectly okay, right? We have some great examples of kids that are national level runners now that, were not at that level when they started by any means. So we will move them into another group where they're going to be able to keep up a little bit better. And so just know that may happen from time to time, right? And it's a matter of safety. It's not a matter of anything else. There's not a preference. There's not I like this kid, I don't like that kid, nothing like that. So just keep that in mind, and help us out, right? Your kids. Right now, just so you know, dog should be the only group that has kids that are walking. We know we have kids in other groups that are walking, and for now that is okay. But we need to fix that real quick, right? Because the walking is when they fall drastically behind. So if your child's in that situation, if we decided we need to move them to dog, we will. The other groups, we're going to give it a week or two while kids get used to the running. We're going to try to break it up into smaller segments in some groups. We're doing things where we can to make sure they can all run together. But if your child is not in dog, or even if they're in dog for that matter, we need to really emphasize that they shouldn't be walking. And sometimes they need to, right? Let's give them time to adjust. But we may have to do that in dog as opposed to the other groups. Bathroom and bathroom. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Going back to that and just making to reiterate the idea that it's not the idea of a demotion, right?
Right.
I know that becomes very sensitive. That's not our goal. The goal is, like you said, it's safety and a positive experience with the sport, right? So.
Exactly, yeah, and that's why, and just parents, just being very transparent. We actually had a coaches meeting after practice yesterday, and we talked about that, and that's why. If you notice, Tony, I didn't say the word demotion at all. So we talked about that, parents. We're not going to use that with the kids. We did in the past, I'll be honest with you. It's, again, we learn, we change things, but we are going to place them in the correct place so that they're safe, and that they're happy too, because no kid is happy running by themselves. I mean, it's much more fun when you're running with the group. So we'll do that as well. Bathroom breaks, parents, super important. I will not take your child to the bathroom for any reason. So if your child, they should go to the bathroom before practice. That's super important. If you know that they're going to have to go again, or there's nothing you could have done about that, please be around the area, because if they say they need to go, I will not let them go by themselves, or I will not, go take them myself, as an individual coach and one child. Because getting to that, a coach should never, ever, ever, for any reason, ever be alone with your child, period. And that's not because we don't trust our coaches. We trust our coaches. Our coaches are cleared. We go through fingerprints, and all the stuff that other coaches in youth sports go through. It's nothing to do with that. It is simply, one, it's our governing body requires that of us. Two, it's just not a good practice, right? So we will not take your child. And I hate to say this, and I don't say it in a mean way, but even if they're doing the pee dance, right, we will not take them. So you need to be in the area if you think that's going to be an issue on a regular basis. And we can't release them just to any other adults, right? What we might do on runs when we run by the bathroom is we may stop with the entire group and wait outside, and then kids go in and come back out, but we won't go in there with them. It will be in a large group with multiple adults and multiple kids in that area. But again, especially for the younger ones, like the 5, or the 6 and 7 year olds, make sure you're around the area if you think that's going to come up. And then, yeah, I mentioned it already, coaches, right? Like after practice, parents, for those of you that drop off and come back, make sure you're there on time. You have an idea when we finish. We don't want to be in an awkward situation where everyone gets picked up and there's one child left and we have coaches. In that case, just so you know, though, we will keep multiple coaches there. We will never leave one coach alone. There'll be multiple coaches waiting with that child until you arrive. But, please, make sure you're there on time. Same thing with rides. It's not that coaches are being mean, but coaches are told not to give kids rides, right? I know some of your best friends and family friends with other families, that includes coaches that are coaching. That's a little different, right? But in general, a general coach with a stranger's child, just avoid that situation. Don't ask us to give a kid a ride because he can't make it. Not that we're being mean or anything like that. It's just, that's not a good practice, not something we can do. All right, any questions on the safety issues? So that's a big one. Move on. Nutrition and sleep. Okay, this stuff is, and we can talk for a long time on this stuff, but I want to at least cover it at a high level. Hydration, and we will cover a lot of this with the kids in time, right, as we progress through the next few weeks. But giving information to you now. Hydration, at least 8 glasses of water a day or 8 water bottles a day of water is what kids should be drinking. And I know for a fact most kids don't do that. I know for a fact I don't do that, but we all need to try. It makes hydration is a huge factor in performance, not to mention health for in general. So I know, especially once they return to in-person school, it gets a little more difficult, but really helping us emphasize hydration for the kids is very important. And as they get older, they get used to it, right? They get used to it. And, when they get to high school, it becomes very normal for them to walk around with a water bottle and constantly refilling it. And it does make a huge difference, but it's good for their health as well. So something you can enforce at home. Food, balanced meals, no special diets. People, you'll read articles out there about like this superfood and this thing, and this is the best for runners, and just good, solid, healthy, balanced meals is the best thing. And with that, I will say this: kids are kids, right? And this is, I'm going to step a little bit across that parenting line, right? So take it for what it's worth and ignore me if you feel it. Ignore me, that's okay. But I will say this: yeah, kids should eat healthy in general, whether they're runners or not. But once in a while, I don't know, once a week or once a month or whatever you think is appropriate, having them go out and eat some junk food is not a bad thing, right? Have them do that, have them enjoy it, but then go back to eating healthy meals and balanced meals. Don't worry about making specific, like people that make all these crazy juices because it's going to give them superpowers. It won't give your kids superpowers. But I will say, make sure they're balanced meals that can be, become habit for the kids when they're young. It will help them out way beyond running. No dieting, parents. I put this in capital letters because I know that some kids are in our program because parents are concerned about their weight and they want them to lose weight. It's not always spoken, but that is part of the reason why they're here. And that's great. And kids will lose weight running. But please don't put them on diets and have them run at the same time. And this is true for adults, kids, or anybody else. Running will burn tons of calories. The more they do it, the more calories will be burned. They still need to eat healthy, balanced meals and eat the right amount of food. Don't put them into some weird diet because you also want them to lose weight. Or the other reason is parents that really want kids to perform really well will put them on diets so that, because we all know, well, maybe you don't know this, but there's a weight to power ratio in a lot of these types of sports. And yes, the lighter you are, the faster you can run. But there's a diminishing return when you get to the point where kids are sickly and not eating the right amount of foods, including protein, right? It's not just all like carbs. So in general, please no special dieting, just healthy eating, right? And they will do fine. Just so you know, some of you may have read articles. There's been issues at the collegiate level and at the professional level where coaches have been pushing their especially their female athletes to diet in order to become better performers, and it's very devastating for their health in many ways. Iron levels. Iron levels are something, and please discuss this with your doctor. I will make the disclaimer: I am not a doctor. I do not pretend to be a doctor, but I do know this: iron levels for runners are very different than iron levels for regular people. Hopefully, you have a doctor that understands the difference. If you feel your child is very lethargic, sleepy all the time, even before they start running with us, right? But even more so when they start running more, like when they get into Jaguar and Eagle, we see that happen, especially once the kids get older, especially when we see that with girls more common. Have their iron levels tested. They may even come back normal, but if they're normal on the low side, speak to your doctor, explain what they're doing for sports and their general physical activity, including running. And see if they need iron supplements. Most people don't, and they're perfectly okay with eating a balanced, healthy meals. But sometimes some people do, right? And this includes adults, by the way, if you're runners as well. So just know that the iron levels, what's considered normal for a normal person, is not normal for a very active runner. People that do marathons, things like that. So for kids, we rarely see this, but I like to point it out just so you're aware of it in the future. Before and after races, workouts. Super important in terms of like meals, right? After running, for example, I know some kids eat dinner really early, maybe even before practice, which is kind of hard on them because they have to run with a full stomach. But if they do, they still should have something after practice. So make sure they eat a good, something that's recovery. And we're talking some carbs and some protein involved in that. So if it's dinner, great. If it's not, something else that, and it's as simple as like chocolate milk. Believe it or not, that is a great something to have that's real simple to have right after a workout or a race for that matter. Before, I won't get into all the details here because we'll go over this in super detail with the kids and you guys can hear as we talk to them in terms of some of the early races. But make sure that when kids race in the morning, for example, at 9 or 10, they don't wake up and are starving and say, oh, no eating because you have to race today. And they run on an empty stomach. That's not good for them. But also having a huge breakfast and then going to race, not a good thing either. So we'll get into that with the kids in terms of what to eat, timing before a race, in terms of how many hours, things like that. Sleep, I put this one at the end because it's a little different than the others, but sleep, super important. And I struggle with this with a lot of my athletes, and some of their parents out there are going to laugh, but even with some of our older athletes, right? Every family is a little bit different. Everyone makes fun of me because I go to sleep really early. Some families are night owls and you guys are all up till midnight. Kids need at least 9 hours of sleep, parents. And I know that's really hard, maybe 10 hours of sleep. I know that's almost impossible, but kids that are operating off 6 hours of sleep are not going to do well in school. And they're definitely not going to do well in running. They struggle with that, and they need to kind of develop that habit of getting more sleep. So again, we're not here, we're coaches, we're not parents, we're not going to tell you how to be parents. But from a coaching perspective, our athletes will perform better if they get enough sleep. It's a game changer. I've seen kids that were struggling with improving, and then they finally start getting enough sleep and they make huge improvements, both at the high school level and with our youth kids as well. All right, parent support for runners. This is big, and there's a lot of items here because parents, I've said it before and I'll say it 1,000 times, you're a big reason why we succeed the way that we do here, with the overall program, with the kids and their performance, with just everything that we do. So I like to point this out because these are all the things that you can get involved with. The number one factor in success in athletics, I'm going to say, but definitely in running. Running is not, I won't lie, running is not a super skilled type sport. In other words, there's many other sports in which you have to have a skill and you have to fine tune that skill. I've known, and I include myself in that category, by the way, in case you're curious, very uncoordinated, no hand-eye coordination, clumsy kids that turn out to be some of the best runners in the country. And so skill is not a major factor in success in the sport. But consistency is the number one reason why kids succeed, meaning they show up to races, they show up to practice, they do what they need to do day in, day out, week after week, month after month, year after year. And you can ask any coach in any cross-country or track team, and it is the number one reason why their kids will succeed. So super important, parents, get them to practices, get them to races, first 2 bullet points. Attendance to bonding events. So this hasn't existed for 1.5 years because of COVID. We're hoping to bring some of this back. We're hoping to have a beach day very soon. We're hoping to have, pool parties and other stuff like that. I know it's not running related or athletic related, or even some way even argue whether it's team related, right? Just a bunch of friends getting together and having a good time. But the closer these runners get to each other, the closer these kids kind of relate to each other, the better friends they'll be, the more willing they are to work together towards a common goal. And that's what we're trying to build for those events. Parents helping us emphasize hard work over natural talent. And you'll see them. We have a ton of very, very talented, naturally talented kids that are amazing what they do. And we always see them, right? And kudos to those kids, right? And they come with some great ability. We have kids that are super hardworking. Work super hard, but it may take them a little longer to get there. Regardless of where your kids fall in that spectrum, right, in terms of the amounts of natural talent they have, the ultimate goal and at the end of it all, whether the end of it all is in high school or college or beyond, those that will be successful in the sport are ones that work hard, period, right? Some may take the lead because they have natural talent and they'll be fast the first season already, right? But little by little, those other kids will get closer and closer and closer to them and eventually pass them if they continue to work hard. So make sure kids don't get discouraged by saying, hey, my friend is already beating me by a lot and I'm nowhere near him or her. But make sure that hard work will pay off in the long run. And we've seen that year after year here with a lot of our kids. Now, of course, if you combine a naturally gifted kid with hard work ethic, then really the sky's the limit at that point. So, and that's what coaches love to see. PRs over winning, right? At the end of the day, in a cross-country meet, there could be 300 runners in that race. There is one winner, technically, right? There's one winner. So if we're always focused on, hey, why didn't you win? And I've heard this from parents before. Why didn't you win the race? And I don't even mean here about this team. I saw this more at the high school level, because there's 350 kids in the race and there's one winner, right? Make sure your kids are focused on PR, meaning improving their time. The more times they do that, the more they improve their time, the better they'll do in the long run, right? And at some point they may win, right? And then if they don't, a runner that finishes 20th or 30th or 40th out of 350 kids is an amazing feat at this level. We have some incredibly, just so you know, parents, by the way, Southern California is the #1 area region in the country when it comes to distance runners, period. There is no other region that can perform at the level that we do. So we run against some not only just great fast kids out there from other teams and in our team, we're out there with national record holders, national returning champions. Even, in fact, we just raced against a girl that is the world leading time in the world at her age group. So just know Southern California is packed. So again, winning is not always going to happen, but these kids are amazing and they'll do amazing things and they will impress you. Long-term goals, make sure that the kids learn that not everything's immediate. They're not going to see returns on their investment in a week or two by any means, and maybe not even in a month, and maybe not even in a season, right? It takes time. They have to look to long-term goals. So make sure that they're focused on the long-term. It's a great life lesson for other stuff as well, but it's very true in running. It takes time to build success in this sport. That's a good lesson for them to learn overall. This one we covered a little bit already, but leave coaches to coaches, please. You know, and I know some of you parents are coaches as well, right? And some of you are even coaches in cross country and track. And I will say we will be reaching out shortly for trying to get more coaches, and we'd love your participation as part of our coaching staff. Usually we try to give new parents a whole season to get used to the way we do things and how the team runs. But we would love your assistance in that. But if you are a parent and not a coach, we ask you to leave the coaching. And I have to be, every season I have to get a little stricter with that. We cannot have parents telling kids, oh, don't do that, do this that I need you to do. Don't do what coach says. Or we're going to do this extra thing over here, or we're going to do that or this, or because at the end of the day, parents, I won't even say that. In some cases, you may be right. Who knows? You may have this great idea and it's wonderful that you have it, right? But the moment the kids start questioning and not even the coaches, when they start questioning the program that they're a part of, things begin to fall apart, right? So remember we talked about #1 thing being consistency. The #2 factor in runner success is belief in their program they're a part of. And if they don't believe that the program they're a part of is going to help them succeed, they will not succeed. And that is incredibly true of any program. You could have the best coach in the entire world, the #1 coach in the world, coaching any team. And if those runners do not believe in that program, they won't succeed. The team will fall apart. This is the way those teams go. So again, we'll ask you to do that. If that's difficult, feel free to send me an email and bring up things. Sometimes I'll agree and say, you're right. That's a good point. Let's work on that. Sometimes we won't. And if it becomes very difficult, then I'm sure there's other teams that may accommodate a little bit better. Last point, positive feedback, parents, and I'm sure you know this already, but so they actually did a study on this, believe it or not. 90% of people respond to positive feedback. There is 10% of the world that are a little strange, and they like to be yelled at and like to be told that they're horrible and that they're horrible human beings and that they're doing horrible and they need to improve. But most people don't respond to that very well. So we're going to focus on that. And again, that tends to work for most kids. And last but not least is there's a ton of activities going on, not just from a coaching perspective. We have a ton of parents that have been indispensable to getting everything that we do done. And if you want to help out and can become part of our consejo and get more involved with our activities and fundraisers we can use to help, we'd love to have parents participate and help out. We are fully a nonprofit now. We opened up an account just this last season or during the middle of the 2 seasons. So we're kind of making some ground there, trying to establish ourselves as more of an organization in that sense. Right, parents, any questions on this one?
Yes, Rojas, not a question, but it is 7:01.
Okay, got it. We got to hurry. Communication, real quick. So everything is based on that weekly Sunday email. Comes out every Sunday with a few exceptions throughout the year, but most times it'll be out on Sunday. That you'll click on that link, you'll see the newsletter. It has all the information in there, including signing up for the Facebook page. Remember, this is an internal Facebook group. You have to request. If you're going to the external one, you're not going to see anything that you need to see. So make sure you include yourself in that Facebook page. If you don't like social media, make up an account. Other ways to communicate to me or to the group coaches is text or calls, right? Feel free to do that. For me personally, text works better because I'm on conference calls all day long at work. but I'll try to respond to you as quickly as I can on those, and I'll see those a little quicker. Facebook Messenger, Instagram Messenger, whatever other messengers are out there, try to avoid trying to communicate one-on-one with us that way. Those are meant for more general public type questions. And honestly, it could be a week before we respond on that. And I'm just going to say for now, don't use it for any type of one-on-one conversation. There's many other methods: email, text, calls, etc. Team talks after practice. You'll see us kind of get the kids together and have conversations with them. So even though they're done running, we ask you to give us a few minutes to talk to them. Usually about like the things that we covered: nutrition, races, strategy, etc. Wednesdays, we're going to start really doing updates every Wednesday during practice, right around 6:30, like when some of the groups are done, but maybe not all the groups. We'll try to gather the parents. So if you're walking or running or doing things, try to come back during that time. Maybe more like 6:40. I'm going to say we'll give announcements, and these are reminders, stuff that's in the email, but there might be slight changes that we want to update you on during that time as well. One-on-ones, feel free to set them up with your group coaches, right? Or if you need to with me as well. But I would suggest right now, go to your group coach, work, talk with them, set up one-on-one times, and then if you need to, you can include me as well. And then social media, if you haven't, followed us on social media, please do so as well. So that we can get the word out more about the team and activities and tagging and whatever it is you guys do out there on social media. COVID updates, nothing big here, right? We had this whole long list of things the previous seasons. Right now, we're at the status where basically if anybody's sick and you're not sure what's going on, parents and kids, please stay home. Outside of that, there is no enforceable COVID policy with outdoor youth sports right now. So we don't have anything beyond that, but that is true. And then we're hoping, of course, respect people, especially if someone's wearing a mask, give them more distance, right? Be respectful of each other's beliefs or views on the situation today. That we do ask everyone to do at this point. Other items I already covered. Our website, athletic.net. I'll show you what that looks like right now. That's where all the kids' times will be for every race they ever run. I'll show what that looks like. Our Facebook page, I already talked about it. High school, collegiate, professional running. I won't get into too long into this, but just know that our goal is to get your kids ready for that, not to burn them out during the years with us. If we do that, we have failed. That is not our goal. No one is ever going to remember me or any of our coaches for saying, hey, yeah, that's the coach that coached that kid when he was 8 years old. No one will ever say that, right? So we have no intent of becoming famous coaches or rich by what we do. But the collegiate coaches, the professional coaches, sure, they'll become famous. But our kids can't get there if we don't do our job. Our job is to keep them interested in the sport, having a good time, making friends, learning how to run, and being prepared to perform well when they get to the high school and other levels. There's a lot more things about collegiate running and scholarships and all that I'm more than willing to discuss with anyone who wants to talk about, but that's years away, right? We can talk about it when they're in 8th grade and you start going towards the high school level. I know that was super fast. I will show you this really quick, and then we'll try to get everybody out here. Training gone wrong. These are some of the things we can do wrong, right? That we're going to try to avoid at any cost. Too much too soon, right? Getting kids running, saying, oh, you're going to run 5 miles today. But it's coach, it's my first week. I don't care. You're running 5 miles. Horrible, horrible thing. And that includes kids running too many days. So parents, please don't have your kids run extra days on their own. If they've already been running with you for years and that's a different story. But if they're brand new to running, be patient with them, with us. We'll get them there. Trust me, we will. We have all Americans on the team. We have national contenders on this team, but we're not going to get them there in a week. And all that you're going to do is get them injured. So too much too soon is a mistake either by us or anyone else. Too fast too soon, right? In other words, introducing too many things too quickly. Having them run fast at every practice. Practice is not a race. We tell the kids that all the time. There is a certain pace that we want them running at, and it's not racing every practice. Racing is for races over speed workouts. Sure. So if you see your kid out there, you're like, why are you jogging? You can go faster than that. That's not going to help them, right? They're supposed to be running at that pace. Short-term gains instead of long-term success. I'll tell you right now, parents, I can get your kids to run faster in 6 months if I put them on a ton of speed workouts, ton. Every day we work on to speed workouts, and they will get faster than our program will get them there. And there's some teams that do that. And I've heard stories of how other teams do it, and they do get faster really, really quick. But one will burn them out, or two, when they get to high school, they will no longer improve. We're going to build bases. We're going to do it the right way. We're not going to focus on those short-term gains. We're going to focus on the success 2 or 3 years down the line. And that's the way our program is going to be carried out. The other one is multiple coaches or programs. I know some of you want to do that, and you've heard of this one coach in this one city of this one team that's a private coach, and they meet with your runners once a week, and they've been recommended by all kinds of people, and they charge $200 an hour. Please don't do that. Again, I can't control that if you do that, but putting your kids through multiple coaches in multiple programs with different ideas of how to do things is confusing the kids and pulling them in 10 different directions, and they just won't enjoy and won't do well. Focus on performance only. Same thing, right? You know, it's all about time and placement, and there's no other reason why they're doing this. The sport of running becomes very difficult. Make sure there's some other reason why they do it. I won't get into the list of those things, but every person that runs has a reason why they do it, and it's very few that only talk about time. Diets we talked about already, so I won't get into that, and I won't get into a lot of these other stuff. This is in that other video. But last, really quick, is athletic.net. Go to that website, look up Whittier Warriors Track Club, which is the way we're here because this was our original name. You'll find all the information about our team, and you can look up things like this. I'll show you one more thing. This is our last track season. We can look up events that our kids participated in and the best time that they ran in those events. And you can click on individual runners, and you can see their entire history of them being on the team has all the information here. Of what events, what they ran, what year, what age group they were in, all that stuff. So basically, it's, you know, it's a resume for running and for runners that they can look at. All right, parents, questions? I know it's super late. I apologize for that.
There are no questions in the chat. They've all been answered.
Great. Then just as a quick reminder, again, deadlines tomorrow night, both for registration for new and returning runners, deadline for uniforms especially, but for gear orders as well. And practice tomorrow at 5:30. All right, last call, parents. Any other questions, comments from anyone on the call? Great. Thank you very much, parents, for your time. Have a good evening.
Oh, Rojas, one.
Yep.
Nope. Thank you, David. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Victoria. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Yeah.